In today's video, we are going to design this beautiful modern login screen in Figma from scratch. Along the way, you will learn spacing, typography, colors, auto layout, and few tricks professionals use. Let's get into the video together. So the first thing I'm going to do is to pick a frame. So I'm going to pick iPhone 14 and 15 Pro Max. Okay, so I'm just going to drag it to this way, and what I mostly do is that I want to see how it's going to appear on a mobile phone. So I'm going to just preview it this way by going to, the drop down arrow here, and then, clicking on preview. All right. So I'm going to add a layout guide to help me with alignment. So I'm going to make it on column and change the margin to 16 this way. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to get a background for my login screen, and so I'm going to go with a gradient. Okay, so here I'm just going to add it. I want 3 gradients. So with the first one, I'm going to make it completely dark this way. Okay, and then with the second, I'm going to add this color 1414. Okay, a shade of blue, 74 this way. And then with the third color, I'm going to make it 3A 0631 this way. And so I'm just going to tilt it a little bit, let it be in the corner this way, just like this, and change this to 1%. All right, and make this at least to be 57% this way. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to get my status bar. So I'm just going to go to asset this way, and I'll type status bar this way. All right, so I'm just going to pick this one for iPhone and then drag it to my frame over here. Okay, so since I have a dark background, I'm going to change it to be a little bit of white this way. So I'm going to just center it and send it up a little this way. All right, so I'm going to put a logo here for the login screen. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I have my logo already, so I just pasted it in here. Okay, so somewhere this way, I'm going to make the the vertical to be 144 this way. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to the rectangle and drag it across. My content is going to be on this rectangle this way, and I'm going to give it a height of 633. All right, and a width of 370 this way. Okay, and I've got to center this now. Okay, so let's change the width and then make it to be just in line with my grid layout. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do here is to give it a corner radius. So with that, I'm going to give it a corner radius of 20 this way, and then I'm going to add a stroke, and that stroke I'm going to make it to be pure white this way, and inside the rectangle I'm going to give it also a white color this way. Okay, and then I'm going to reduce the opacity. I'm going to make it 10. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm going to make the opacity 10. Okay, this way. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do here is to bring in a text. Okay, so I'm just going to drag the text and then write welcome back this way. Since it is the header, I'm going to change it from regular to bold, and I'm going to increase the font size to 32 this way, and then I'm just going to center it. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is just to duplicate this text. All right, so duplicate it and reduce the font size to 16. All right, I'm just going to put a sub header there, something like login to continue. Okay, so login to continue to your account. Yeah, something like this. And then I'm going to drag it across this way. All right, this way. Okay, and I'm just going to center this. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I'm going to add an auto layout to this too. So Shift plus A, and I'm going to give it a distance of 12. All right, and then center the whole thing this way. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to create the placeholders. So the first is for the email. So we have email address this way. Okay, so email address. But before then, I want to reduce this color, change it from pure white to something like this. Yeah, to bring some distinction there. Okay, so I have my email address here. So what I'm going to do is to increase this a little, or reduce it rather, to medium. Okay, and then I'm going to duplicate this. Okay, and then drag it down here. All right, and then I'm going to create the placeholder. So I'm just going to use something like example at gmail.com. Okay, so for modern login screens, they always use an example just to guide the user, so the user really know what he or she is supposed to put there, even though there's an email. So Shift plus A to add an auto layout, and then I'm going to increase the height to 56 so that it can be large enough for the thumb to press. Then the corner radius here, I'm going to change it from 0 and make it 12 this way, and then I'm going to drag this all the way to this side. Okay, I'm going to drag it all the way to this side, and then bring it back here. Increase the padding to 15 at the left side, and then add a stroke. Okay, so the stroke, I'm going to change it to white this way. All right, so I'm also going to add a fill to that. So I'm just going to click on the fill here and then change it to pure black. Okay, pure black. Okay, so I'm going to make it 20 this way. Okay, so what I'm basically going to do is to drag this here, and then select the two, and then Shift A to add an auto layout. All right, so auto layout makes everything simple, and the distance between the email address and the placeholder. I'm going to make it 12. So we are using a 12-point, system. So we are going in multiples of, we are using a 4-point system. So we are going in multiples of, 4. All right. So I'm just going to duplicate this, Control D to duplicate this. All right. And change this to password this way. And then, change this as well. So I'm just going to put some stars there, so the person will know that he or she has to put, in a password over there. Okay, something like this. Okay. All right. So this way. Okay. So, I want the distance between these two to be, 20. Okay, so I'm just going to give that distance of 20. But before then, let's put the distance between these two. Okay, let's make it 52. So let's get that distance and make it 52. Remember, we are dealing with multiples of 4. Okay, and then the distance between this and this, also we're going to make it 20. Okay, so the next thing here is to add a forgot password. Forgot password, so that the user can be able to use this link to get his or her password back when he or she has forgotten it. All right, so I'm going to reduce the size of this and make it 14 this way. Okay, so here we go. And I want the user to know that this is a link, right? So I'm going to underline this, okay, to show that it's a link. So I'm going to go to where we have the typography. I'm going to go to type settings here and then click underline here. All right, so we have the password underlined this way, and I'm going to make it bold. All right, this way. So I'm just going to put it somewhere here. And the next thing also to make a small placeholder for the user to type, to put in forgot password. Okay, so I'm going to make the radius here to be something like corner radius to be 4, and give it a stroke of pure white this way. And then I'm going to change the fill to black this way and make it something like 20 this way. Okay, so the next thing is to bring the text, which will say remember me. Okay, so that the user can be able to click here and so that whenever he or she wants to log in next time, he or she will just have to click and then get straight to the platform without inputting his or her details this way. So I'm going to add an auto layout to this to just to help with alignment. It's very, very important. So let's just try and adjust this well. Okay, so that's perfect. So I'm going to add select this to another auto layout, Shift A, just to help with alignment and all that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to select this, the second one, and this, and add an auto layout. Okay, so Shift plus A and give it a distance of 20, because that's the distance I want to be between this. All right. Then the next thing is to create a login button where the user will press to log in into the account. So I'm going to pick a text this way and then write, login this way. Okay, so change this to 16. Okay, it's already on board. Then Shift plus A to add an auto layout. And I'm going to change the height to 56 for consistency's sake. Okay, then I'm going to make the radius to be 50 because I want to round corners for this. And let's drag it here to make sure it is in line this way. Okay, so let's input some colors there. With a few, I'm going to go with gradient. Okay, so with the gradient here, I'm going to go with 150966 this way. And then with this side, I'm going to go with 2A11cc. Okay, this way, like this. Okay, so with this, I'm not just going to leave it like this. I'm going to create a modern, button. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to duplicate this, okay, and drag it down here. Then with this one, what I'll do is I'm going to go to effects, all right, this way, and then I'm going to go to let's go to layer blur this way, and then change the settings to somewhere 50. Yeah, I guess this is okay. Okay, then I'm going to drag this one on top of it this way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just to go to here this way. So I just think this is too blurry. Let's see 20, or let's even make it 100 and see. Now 100 is going to be too out of line. Okay, I think this is okay. So I'm just going to go to the file here so that I can be able to just select a 2 this way. So that will be 26 and 25, and then group them or put them together. Okay, so I'm also going to add a stroke to this. So for the stroke here, I'm going to give it a color of let's do the 2A11cc. Okay, so let's do this color this way. Okay, and I'm going to increase this just to give it more depth. So somewhere, let's do 3 this way. Yes. So I'm going to have it this way, like this. All right, so the next thing here is to check the distance between these two, and I'm going to make this 40. Remember, multiples of 4, right? So I'm going to make it this way, and then bring in a text again. Okay, where I'm going to put or login with. Okay, so here I want to give an option to the user to be able to use other means to log into this account. So that is what I'm basically going to do here. Okay, so with this, I'm going to reduce the size of this, okay, and make it 16. All right, but then I'll reduce this to somewhere regular this way. Okay, so let's center this way and then push it up a little, and let's bring some lines, at this side. Control D to duplicate this and bring it to this side as well. So I'm going to select everything and Shift A to add an auto layout to this, and then I'm just going to center this way. Okay, so the distance between this should be 20, so I'm going to work on that and make it 20 this way. Okay, now the next thing is to bring in the options that I want to give the user, which is the Gmail and the Apple. So I'm going to go to my plugins and go to Iconify, and then I'm just going to drag in the Apple logo here and also go for Google. Alright, so I'm just going to drag it also here. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is that, since I don't want to do everything from scratch again, I'm just going to copy this here. Okay, now so let me copy this one rather. So copy here and then paste it somewhere here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the corner radius to a total round, to make it very, very round that way, and then I'll just basically increase this to somewhere, let's say 60. Okay, I think the 60 is going to be too much, so let's do 40 this way. Okay, and then I'm going to change the stroke and make it black this way, and just reduce this way, and yeah, something like this, and then even reduce the fill, the 20% to somewhere 10% this way. Okay, or let's make it 15. Okay, so basically this, then I'm just going to drag this across and put it on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, the circle and the Google logo, then Shift A to apply an auto layout. Then I'll just Control D to duplicate it. Then I'll bring the Apple logo there into this. Okay, then I'll just delete the Google logo this way. Okay, so that I have it at the center that way. So I'm going to add an auto layout to the tool, Shift plus A, and reduce the distance between this to 20. Okay, this way, and then I'll just basically center this. Okay, all right. So the distance between this and this, okay, we made it 52, so Shift plus A. All right, going to add that, and then between this and this also we made it 40, so Shift plus A. Then this and this, okay, it's basically just going to be 20. Okay, this way, so Shift A. Okay, so as you can see, we have this done beautifully here. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do here is to bring a text at the bottom here, so that when they don't have an account they can sign up. Okay, so let's have this. Okay, don't have an account. Okay, don't have an account, so they can sign up. Don't have an account, sign up this way. So I have to increase this a little bit so that this will just be at the bottom this way. Okay, so I'm going to change this here. Okay, let me remove that. Everything is there. So have it here, and then Control D, duplicate this, then put this into this like this. All right, so I'm going to change the color of this. Okay, so I'm going to change the color of that and then make it 2A1166. Okay, this is going to be too dark on the this, so I guess we can just maintain it that way. All right, so Shift A, or better still, I'm just going to underline that so that they know that it's a link. So I think that will be perfect. Okay, so Shift A this way. Okay, so we can center this and then bring it down so that we can increase this a little bit. Increase this to the top. Yes, a little bit this way. Then this can also go up this way. Okay, so Shift plus A to everything. Okay, then I'm going to select the content and this background, so Shift plus A to add an auto layout to everything to make it perfectly aligned this way. All right, so I'm going to put in this here at the bottom. That always stays at the bottom of mobile phones this way. So let's reduce it a little and center that, and we just drag it down a little this way. Yes, so basically this is what we have. Okay, so if you are enjoying this tutorial, subscribe, because every Tuesday we are designing another real app. Right, so next Tuesday we will build the sign up screen together, so make sure you have subscribed. So basically this is how you can build a very beautiful let me just off the layout guide. This is how you can build a very beautiful modern login screen where you have everything here that makes it modern and then very, very attractive. Okay, remember, great designers aren't born, they are built. See you in the next one. Bye.